Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our SIRS Next Year Scheduler webinar. What we're going to do is just quickly go through the basics of next year scheduling, and we're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. And because we are recording this webinar, please send any questions that you might have about next year scheduling to Marvell or Janaea at the SIRS Help Desk. This webinar will be presented by the SIRS Help Desk, so that is Marvell Bradley and myself, Janaea Clemens. So here's today's agenda for the webinar. We're going to start off by looking at accessing the next year scheduler. We're going to look at the initial board, followed by taking a look at the tracks. We're going to show you how to set up your next year calendars. We will also talk about adding staff. And for number 6, we will look at Student Info 1 tabs. Number 7, we will touch on Homerooms, followed by looking at class setup and schedule. Then we will quickly touch on student demographics, and we will close off the webinar by talking about adding student for next year. So, for those of you who have not yet been in the next year scheduler, to get there in SIRS, you need to go to Schedule, Next Year Scheduler. You will know that you are in the next year scheduler by a different background in SIRS, so it will say the next year scheduler. You can kind of see this in the second screenshot on the slide. Please make sure you see this background before updating any next year information, because that is a key identifier in knowing that you are in the next year scheduler. Then when you're ready to go back to current SIRS, you can go to File, Exit Scheduler, and you'll be back in regular SIRS. The first step in next year scheduling is to either copy your initial board or create a blank board. Copying a board is the most common option schools go with, but it is whatever works best for your school. Whichever you decide to go with, we ask that you title the board in this order. So we have an example on the slide. We want it to go school year, school name, and copy number. You can create as many copies as you'd like at this stage. If you have started setting up classes and schedules one way, but would like to try an alternative way, then feel free to create a new board or copy the initial board again. We just suggest numbering the copy in your title just to tell you which version it is, and it'll help you distinguish between the different boards you have created. After your board is created, you can start to set up classes for next year, enroll students into their next year classes, and you can also start to work on calendars. After the next year schedule is complete, before you leave in June, please name the board in the following format. So this is the second example on the slide. The format should be school year, school name, final. When we do the rollover in the summer, we select the board titled final, so it is very important that you have a final board. We just need to be able to distinguish which one you want to be rolled over into the next year. Now looking at tracks. We have updated all next year tracks to reflect the start and end dates for the 2015-2016 school year. We are still waiting on the semester dates, which the SIRS Help Desk will update once we have them, and we are also still waiting on the report period dates. So the division office will give schools a report period window for report cards. Then, once each school makes its own decision, the report period dates can be updated by yourselves, the admin assistants at the schools, for each next year track. Also, for anyone who is wondering, the 6-day and altered calendars will be tentatively released at the admin meeting on March 18th. For each track, please go in and look over the following. Days, blocks, and attendance blocks for the most part should be the same from year to year, but it is always a good idea to double check. Last year we asked that all schools enter in the instructional minutes for their blocks, and we are continuing to ask for this information for next year. Another note about blocks is that for next year, the school division is asking that schools include all bell times in their blocks. This includes recesses and lunch. We're going to be sending out more information on this request in the next Monday memo, so please watch for that. But with this new information that must be included, we ask that you please send it to the SIRS Help Desk, and we will update your tracks with the new info over the summer. Though it is rare, if any of your schools have decided it is necessary to alter, add, or remove a track in SIRS, please give Marvell and Janaea a call. We will make sure all scheduling information has been updated to go along with the track change. For example, you may wish to add another kindergarten track if you have enough kindergarten students to run 2 classes. thus having kindergarten every day. Now into the calendar section. Each next year track will need a calendar setup. These can only be set up in the next year scheduler, so this is a new feature this year. You used to be able to edit these in regular SIRS, but now you can only create your calendars within the next year scheduler. And while working in the next year scheduler, please be sure to select the next year track before working on your calendar. When it comes to setting up the calendar for each track, be sure to enter all holidays, so an H, and PD days, the PD, into the calendar first. Once these are in, enter in the number of days in your school's cycle. In this example, the school has a 4-day cycle. So we entered in the 1, 2, 3, 4. You can then calculate the days to the end of the month, term, or track. Either option is fine. It is whatever you and your school prefers. Then once you have calculated your days, you can see in the second screen that non-instructional days will show up as orange and instructional days will show up as blue. For kindergarten calendars, you will need to follow the same process as elementary, middle years, and high school calendars. However, once you calculate your days, then you will need to go back in and add in your non-instructional NI days for the days without kindergarten. So if it is every other day. For example, on our screen here, we can see that out of a 6-day cycle, kindergarten is held on days 2, 4, and 6. To print hard copies of your school's calendars, you have to be in current SIRS. To do so, go to Setup, Reports, Calendar, and select the next year track, and then choose the type of calendar you want. The most commonly used calendar, and the one we often suggest, is the graphic calendar. The graphic calendar includes holidays, PD days, and non-instructional days. And here is an example of that graphic calendar. And just a note that it'll print out for the entire school year, whereas our screenshot only has it going until February. Adding new staff. All new staff at your school need to be entered into the staff list in SIRS. And for all of these staff, you also need to enter in their HR numbers under the Custom tab. When adding in new staff, it is also mandatory to include a staff code. So this is just depending on the position of the new staff member. And you can find these staff codes on page 5 of the next year scheduling section in our SIRS manual. If you are already aware of new staff that are coming to your school next year, then you can go ahead and add them now. When you do so, the mandatory fields to fill in are the staff code, the last and first name, the staff indicator, and the format for that is the last name, comma, first initial, period, as well as the email address. And just a note that when you're entering in email addresses in this field, it must be the staff's cornerstone email address. And email addresses are mandatory, especially for teachers, because it is needed for their students achieve access. The Custom tab when adding staff also has required fields, and those fields include the HR number, which allows access to Scopus for report cards, Review 360, and Blackboard. And just a note that interns will not have an HR number, so if you have an intern at your school, it is okay to leave this area blank. The educator certificate number is what ties teachers to classes and is necessary for SDS submissions. You can fill in the additional information if available, for example, the staff member's address. If you do not know the new teaching staff but would like to schedule for the new teacher, this can be set up in SIRS as well. We have an example on the screen here for you. So you can just contact the SIRS Help Desk and we will show you how you can set this up. And another reminder that though you are able to add new staff for next year now, please remember not to remove any staff until you return to school in August. So if you know that you currently have staff members who will not be returning to your school in the fall, you must leave them in your staff list, and they can only be removed once you come back in the summer. Student Info 1 tabs are an essential part of next year's scheduling. All students enrolled at your school before December 22nd, 2014 will have the following Info 1 tabs filled in. Anyone enrolled since then will need their Info 1 tab manually filled in. So you can use the question mark search if you're wondering if any of your students are missing information. So just use the question mark search to find any empty next year fields. And if you need a hand in doing this, just please contact the SIRS Help Desk. Also, since populating the next year's scheduler at the end of December, we have noticed that some schools have since withdrawn students from their schools but have forgotten to clear out the Info 1 tab. Please remember to remove all Info 1 fields if you're withdrawing a student from now until the end of June. If you have a student who is transferring to another school within our division, for example, withdrawing from McNaughton and will be attending Merrifield next year, clear out their Info 1 tabs and fill in the next year school. And you can do this because the next year school is within Southeast Cornerstone School Division. As soon as you do this, you will lose access to the student's Info 1 tab. The next year school will then need to go in and fill in the student's remaining information in their Info 1 tab, and this will be including their next year out status as withdrawn. To see the student, the receiving school will have to look under the group Next Year Students. This slide shows that the next year school can now see the transferring student because the next year school was entered. The new school must now fill in the student's next year grade, next year track, next year in status, and next year out status. The next year out status must be withdrawn so that the student gets withdrawn from McNaughton properly and enrolled into Merrifield properly. If you have a student who will be leaving your school and attending a school division outside of our division next year, then please do not enter an out-of-district next year school. Doing so will result in restricted access for yourself and the SIRS help desk included. If a student is going to an out-of-district school next year, you only need to enter next year out status withdrawn. All grade 12 students will only have withdrawn entered in their next year out status. That is all that will be entered in their Info 1 tabs. However, if you have a returning grade 12 student, then you will need to take out their next year out status and fill in the remaining mandatory next year fields. When it comes to updating homerooms, the majority of schools have to wait until the fall to put students into homerooms. If you are interested in having this setup completed before the end of June, please contact us. If there's enough interest, we will put together a video or perhaps another webinar solely on next year homerooms. Otherwise, you can do a global update to your homerooms when you return in the fall. And now a few notes about homerooms is that kindergarten must have its own homeroom. For example, you cannot have a K/1 homeroom, and this is because kindergarten and grade 1 belong to different tracks, and this will affect students' achieve. So again, kindergarten must be set up as its own homeroom. Also, just to give everyone a heads up, the division is moving towards standardizing certain areas of SIRS setup, and homeroom naming may be one of these in the future. For example, some schools distinguish their different homerooms by using a staff name or perhaps a color or a number, and this may be changed so all schools have to use consistent terminology. At this time, please do not alter any homerooms. They are shared with the current school year. So if you go into the next year scheduler and think that you're updating a homeroom for next year, you are actually altering current information. If you must make a change to a current year homeroom, please contact Marvell and myself, and we will make sure the people that it affects know about the changes. In the fall, you can also easily set up homerooms using a global update. For example, if all of your grade 2s will be in the 2/3 homeroom, then select the grade as your group. Select all of the students and then proceed to updating them into the 2/3 homeroom. Always be sure to double check a student's demographics afterwards just to confirm that it worked. Now into class setup and schedule. A copied board. So this process copies all of your current year classes and assigns the correct next year track. The resources, schedule, report periods, and room numbers attached will remain the same as well. If any of these class details have been changed for the 2015-2016 school year, please make sure to adjust each class accordingly. As the slide says, if you have a next year class with a new or different teacher, or even if you are not 100% sure who will be teaching the class, please make sure to remove the old teacher before the end of this school year. This is necessary to prevent creating inaccurate classes and students achieve for your teachers. This also prevents old teachers from appearing on documents in the upcoming school year. If you created a blank board, then once you know the classes your school will be offering for the year, they can be added here. To do so, please follow the procedure in our SIRS manual. It's under the Classes section. Also, if your school is offering new classes and cannot find them listed here, please contact the SIRS Help Desk and we will be able to add them into SIRS for you. Now, once classes are set up in Class Setup and Schedule, you will then be ready to enroll students into classes. And to do so, the easiest way is to use a global enrollment option. So here we have an example where we selected our grade 4 students. We used today's date because the class start date comes from the tracks. We selected our low and high grades, and this generated a list of classes in the left-hand box for us. Double-click or click on the arrow pointing to the right to select the classes you wish to enroll students into. Once you have all of the classes listed, you can select Proceed. And student demographics. So you will be updating these fields in SIRS upon the return of either the demographic or the registration form. Some schools send these home at the end of June, while others send them home with students at the start of the school year. So whichever point your school sends them home, once you have them back, please go into student demographics and update any necessary information. And now finally, adding student for next year. If you have a student who has previously attended a Southeast Cornerstone school, then it is best to use the SIRS ID number here. As soon as you type it into the SIRS ID field and tab, it will generate the student's information for you. If you do not have it, then you need to fill in the student's legal last, first, and middle name, as well as their gender and birth date. If you are unsure if the student is a previous Southeast Cornerstone student, then be sure to look through the list of students after clicking Next. If they do not show up in this list, then they are new to the division. Double checking this is a great way to prevent accidentally adding a duplicate student. Also, we want to make a note to please make sure to attach siblings at this time. Attaching them after the enrollment process will affect the student's contact information, and it will uncheck lives with for the contact. Then you can continue to fill in the student's demographic information. And again, right here, we need to make sure to fill in the next year track, the next year in status, the next year grade, and homeroom. Continue to fill in contact and sibling information, as well as add in the multi-address if that is necessary, and then continue to fill in the remaining demographic tabs accordingly. And after this process, please remember to go into the student's demographics once you're finished. And we believe it is a good practice to go through each tab in student demographics to ensure everything is entered correctly and no mandatory fields were missed during the enrollment process. So that sums up our next year scheduling webinar for today. If you have any questions, again, because this is a recording, please email them to Marvell and myself, and we will include them in the Q&A document that we will be sending out shortly. And again, we would just like to thank everyone for taking the time to either attend or watch our SIRS webinar on next year scheduling. Thank you.